Hey guys, somebody asked me about blood pressure because I shared my results, so I want to just quickly tackle this one. My blood pressure reading today was 110 over 61. Now, the blood pressure reading will really indicate what's going on with our adrenals. So it's not just cardiovascular health, but cardiovascular health includes our kidneys. Therefore, our adrenals are super important. If you're not familiar with the adrenal glands, there are two glands that are sitting on top of your kidneys, and they regulate blood pressure, they regulate stress levels, they regulate metabolism. So they will release things like estradiol, which is a very powerful form of estrogen, and it is really important in women my age going into perimenopause and later into menopause that our adrenals are working fine and releasing estradiol, because at some point our ovaries won't make enough, and therefore the job goes into the adrenals when we get into menopause. So we want to make sure that it's in balance. Weaknesses in the adrenals for women in a sexual way means dryness, lack of libido, overwhelm, and our hormones all over the place. We want to avoid all these things. As for the production of corticosteroids, very, very important. The corticosteroids are anti-inflammatory, but they also help with the metabolism of glucose. Therefore, people that have type 2 diabetes generally have issues with their kidneys, but we just don't look at it. We think pancreas only, but actually it's got to do with the adrenals as well. And interestingly enough, when I got type 2 diabetes, at the same time I also had adrenal fatigue, severe adrenal fatigue. I was exhausted. I couldn't wake up in the morning without feeling like I had been working all night. I was exhausted. I was sleeping. At the beginning, I was sleeping actually very poorly because my hormones were all over the place. Then after that, I was sleeping a lot but feeling exhausted. Granted that I wasn't eating fine anymore. I was eating still a vegan diet, but honestly, lots of bread, vegan cheese, convenient things, things that I would never even dream about having. Way too much oil. Like I was like olive oil galore, which is something I grew up with, but I think at some point I was just eating too much. And then I really hit bottom, rock bottom. In fact, I say the story all the time, but I looked at myself in the mirror probably after 8 months of completely avoiding the mirror, and I didn't recognize what I saw. I was like, who is this person? I was over 70 kilos, which is not a massive amount of weight that I am. I wasn't like, you wouldn't, I guess you would see that I put on weight, but you wouldn't be like, oh, she's fat or obese. But I felt very uneasy in my body. But at the same time, I didn't, because all the extra was cushioning me, like the emotions that I needed to cushion, right? Only when I started actually going raw, looking after myself, I decided that I couldn't carry on like that, that I knew that there was more to life, and I didn't know what it would look like. I hadn't even envisioned having the space. I made a lot of silly decisions in that period of time, in the sense that I didn't think about how I would invest my money, how I would transform my business. I was also in a state where I actually really believed everything was collapsing, especially with the pandemic. And there was, I know this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but this is really like a definition of adrenal fatigue as well. I was almost happy that everything was just going to shit, because I'm like, if it ends now, I will be happy. Like, I remember even thinking, if I don't wake up tomorrow, I will be happy. Like, I didn't want to live. I just didn't have that energy to live. My adrenals were exhausted, mentally, physically, spiritually. I was just exhausted. Looking back, I actually realized where the gaps were, my emotional gaps, and I take a lot of responsibility for a lot of them. But I also realized that I didn't have a supporting system around me that could support me and help me, and that, I think those things are lessons. They help you out, but they definitely challenge you to having to look at the bigger picture in the present moment. And I think that's really why, even though it was a hard time, when I look back, I'm really grateful that I went through all of it. And what I'm going through now, for example, in my personal life, even though it's hard, I'm actually happy I am going through it. So I don't know what, if it's the spiritual awakening, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like it doesn't matter what's happening around me, the stillness and calm inside is really real. Like it's okay. And it's not that calm as in I'm exhausted, I can't deal with this. It's that calm like I can't control everything and it's okay. So in any case, going back to the blood pressure, the numbers we're looking to see are between 120 and 110. Now I know that Dr. Morse doesn't necessarily agree with the numbers there. You would think 120, 130 for systolic are better. I don't know if his view has changed in the last few years. I personally think lower range is better. I think anything below 110 could be a sign of adrenal fatigue or disorders, but 110 to 120, they're perfectly fine. In fact, I feel like 110 is actually really, really healthy because it's like the mid range where you're not pushing too much, but you're also functioning really well. And I feel it overall in my body, so I can tell that. And a lot of people that have that kind of numbers, even Matt that shared his blood work, we're feeling great. So, if you practice meditation, if you practice mindfulness, if you're practicing feeling connected to the present moment, it's very likely that blood pressure will be very mild. It won't be like really high. Now, when it comes to diastolic, which is the bottom number, you want to see anything between 60 and 70. Anything above 70 could indicate adrenal stress, which eventually could also be adrenal fatigue, because everything that works too hard will tire out. And anything below 60 could mean, or definitely would mean, adrenal insufficiency. So you are going to feel a little bit flatter. Now, because I tend to have generally genetically a lower blood pressure, and I had, as I said, I had adrenal fatigue, my numbers were like 100 over, I don't know, maybe 60 as well. But I think some herbs can really help. And one of the herbs that I find incredibly helpful for blood pressure, if it's low, it's taking licorice. Licorice root is awesome for lifting up the adrenals a little bit. Of course, there are other things you can take, like astragalus are really, really powerful for supporting the adrenals. There are medicinal mushrooms like cordyceps that do the same. You can have adaptogens like maca or ashwagandha that can do that. So there are many different things that can really, truly help supporting the adrenals. Supporting the adrenals, supporting the blood pressure. And that's something to look into, I believe. And yeah, so if you have those numbers, you're doing really, really well. If you have high blood pressure, one of the things that you can do to lower it is balance out your intake of sodium, of course. But I generally see it this way. If you are on a plant-based diet like me, fully vegan but whole food, plant-based, especially mostly raw, having salt is actually beneficial. Food like celery is really beneficial because you're having a very high amount of potassium through the other vegetables. So I think balancing them out is really, really important. Actually, not having enough sodium in the blood can be a problem. So not having any salt can be a problem. I know some doctors are like, salt is bad for you, but it depends on the circumstances. It depends on how you eat. So I'm not saying you have to put a bunch, but a little bit actually balances out. And you want to have that. Electrolytes are important, and sodium potassium balance is very important for that. Then I would say making sure that you exercise. So of course, if you have tendency to have adrenal fatigue, don't go to the gym and do like an hour of pumping iron or even worse, like cardio, like HIIT classes. Do not do that. If you want to balance out your hormones, if you want to balance out your adrenals, if you want to balance out your blood pressure, you have to find a workout that doesn't stress your body out. This is especially important for females, for women, because our hormones don't like the stress that you can get when you're when you're exercising in a way that is not appropriate for our makeup. So I used to, for example, in my 20s, do a whole bunch of weights and cardio. I used to train over 2 hours a day, every single day, and I was exhausted. And on top of it, Even though I was working so hard, I just couldn't achieve the body I wanted. I had muscles under, of course, because I was like really lifting, but on top I had fat because my body was trying to balance out testosterone, which was really high because of my workouts, with estrogen. And to make more estrogen in the body, especially when you're deficient, and I was on the contraceptive pill because of my skin, so my body wasn't naturally making it. But what the body's clever and was trying to do is to say, how are we going to make this estrogen? She's got way too much testosterone to balance it out. The pill wasn't enough. I was having more fat on my body to create estrogen. Now, of course, that went totally on the other side because I was full of toxins. I was drinking from, plastic bottles. And I unfortunately did it a little bit here for a period of time before I got my reverse osmosis machine. But yeah, you have to think about all these things. I wasn't eating the perfect diet because, well, I was still binging, unfortunately. And quite honestly, I was eating animal products and I wasn't buying a lot of organic animal flesh because I couldn't afford it. In London, it was really expensive. So you can't, so I was buying organic chicken, but it really makes no much difference. But probably the point is I was getting a lot of hormones from the animals I was eating too. So it was a mess. So I couldn't have the body I wanted. When I went plant-based, everything transformed. Of course, it all went to shit when I actually stayed vegan, but ate a lot of artificial junk food vegan diet. And that's just as deterrent as eating an omnivore Western diet. So, but I acknowledge all that. This is why you have to look at nutrition in such a beautiful, holistic way. I'm sorry for my little cold here. I stepped out and went to my friends were cleaning at the vet, and I think they use way too much bleach. Everything just locked up. I don't know why people have to use bleach. It's the worst thing you can use. Anyway, education one by one because otherwise you just go crazy. So guys, I wanted to just share this about your blood pressure. Make sure that you check it every day if you can. It's called the silent killer for a reason. You want to keep it in check. These machines to take your blood pressure are super cheap. You can find them for $20 at your pharmacy, and honestly, it's worth having one at home. Check your blood pressure first thing in the morning. It's a good indicator of what's going on in the body because also cortisol is a little higher, so that would be the higher range of your blood pressure. To wake up, you need a bit of cortisol. If you see that your adrenals are really low at night and in the morning, then maybe there's a bit of insufficiency there. So you can take adaptogens, you can take some herbs, you can talk to me and just think about what kind of diet you can have to change that. So yeah, wanted to share this and I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you soon.